welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a really fascinating story, one that's deeply woven into American manufacturing history, and it definitely resonates here in southern Arizona.
Absolutely. We're talking about Ruger Firearms.
Exactly. Sturm, Ruger & Co., founded way back in 1949. And this isn't just, a list of guns they made.
No, not at all. It's about the innovation, the thinking behind it, the founders, pretty strong principles, and how a company like that keeps going, keeps changing, but also tries to stay true to itself.
Yeah. And for this deep dive, our main guide is a piece from the Gun Website's blog, written by G. Webbs. It gives us a really solid look into Ruger's journey.
It does. It provides a lot of the details and, maybe more importantly, the context we need to understand not just what they built, but maybe why they built it that way.
Right. And what that means for, firearms ownership, manufacturing, especially today.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission today is to really unpack that Ruger story using the blog post. We'll start in the beginning, look at those key moments, the tech innovations.
Like that investment casting, which was huge.
Definitely. And then trace the growth, get into Bill Ruger's philosophy, because that's a big part of it, and see how the company looks now.
And being here in southern Arizona, where firearms are, part of the landscape for hunting, sport, collecting, self-reliance, understanding a major player like Ruger, it just adds important context, doesn't it?
It really does. And the source hints at some pretty interesting stuff, like a Japanese design kicking things off.
Yeah, that's a detail that often surprises people.
And that manufacturing technique we mentioned, how it kind of shook things up. Plus, Bill Ruger's very specific views on government and citizens' rights.
Strong views, for sure. And then how the company operates now, which is apparently quite different from the industry standard in some ways.
So yeah, let's dive into this history. We invite you, our listener, to explore it with us.
It's a great story. It really blends, practical engineering with a very clear vision of who they wanted to serve. That Gun Website's blog post gives us a good roadmap.
Okay, so let's rewind. Back to the very beginning, 1949, Southport, Connecticut.
Right. Two guys, William B. Ruger and Alexander Sturm. That's where Sturm, Ruger & Co. starts. Not some big established firm, just these two individuals.
And the source really zooms in on Bill Ruger himself. He wasn't your typical corporate founder, was he?
No, not according to the blog post. It paints him as largely self-taught, really passionate about firearms from a young age, fascinated by how they worked, the tools needed to make them.
A designer first, it sounds like.
Exactly. The source emphasizes he saw himself primarily as a designer, an engineer, not necessarily a businessman in the traditional sense. And that focus on the craft, on the mechanics, seems absolutely fundamental to what Ruger became.
And that identity really took shape with their very first product, didn't it? The Ruger Standard .22 pistol.
Critical first step. The blog post describes it as the launch pad for the whole company.
And it wasn't just okay, it was successful. It put them on the map right away.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about the Standard .22, as the blog post details, is where the idea came from.
The Japanese Nambu.
That's the one. Apparently, Bill Ruger got his hands on one after World War II and was really struck by certain design elements, the grip angle, the feel of it.
So he copied it.
Not directly copied, no, more like inspired by. He saw things he liked in the Nambu's design, the ergonomics, the comfort, and thought, okay, I can take these ideas and build a better, more reliable, and importantly, affordable .22 pistol using American materials and know-how, aiming for top performance, but accessible.
And it worked.
It definitely seemed to. It wasn't an instant overnight success without effort, of course, but the quality for the price point really resonated with American shooters at the time. It proved his design approach worked and basically validated the whole venture from the get-go.
Okay, so that set the stage. Functional, affordable, innovative.
Exactly. That was the initial DNA, you could say.
Now, you mentioned innovative design, and the source puts a lot of weight on a specific manufacturing technique Bill Ruger championed early on. Something that the blog says wasn't the norm back then. Investment casting.
Oh, yes. Investment casting. This is where the technical side gets really strategic. And it's a perfect example of what the source calls Bill Ruger's philosophy of doing what made sense.
So what is investment casting, and why was it such a big deal?
Well, it's actually an ancient process, sometimes called lost wax casting. But applying it so expensively to make major gun parts, like the frame or trigger housing group, that was pretty unconventional for the firearms industry at the time.
What were others doing?
Mostly relying heavily on traditional machining, starting with a solid block or forging of steel and cutting away everything that wasn't the final part. Lots of milling, drilling, grinding.
Which sounds expensive.
It can be, yeah. especially for complex shapes. It takes time, wastes material. The blog post explains why investment casting was, well, a game changer for Ruger. It let them create these intricate parts like receiver frames almost to their final shape in a single pour.
Pouring molten metal into a mold.
Essentially, yes. Using a wax pattern to create a ceramic mold, melting out the wax, then pouring in the steel, you get a part that's very close to the final dimensions. Near net shape is the term. Much less machining needed afterward.
Okay, I see. So it dramatically cut down on manufacturing time and cost.
Precisely. While still achieving really good strength and quality in the parts, this efficiency was, well, kind of revolutionary for making high-quality firearms more affordable.
And this connects back to that gun owner's rights lens we're looking through, based on the source material.
Absolutely. It connects directly to Bill Ruger's stated mission. The blog post quotes him saying he wanted to build guns, and this is the key phrase, that the average man could afford, but that no one would ever feel were cheap.
Okay, so investment casting was the how behind that mission.
Oh. It was a massive enabler, yeah. By slashing production costs without compromising the actual quality or reliability of the firearm, Ruger could put dependable guns into the hands of, well, more people. Everyday folks, hunters, sport shooters, people wanting a tool for self-defense who maybe couldn't stretch to the cost of firearms made using purely traditional, more labor-intensive methods.
So it democratized access, in a way.
You could definitely argue that based on the source's description. It wasn't just a smart business move. The blog portrays it as fulfilling that vision of equipping the average citizen, making quality tools accessible.
And that helped build their reputation early on. Quality, dependable, American-made.
Exactly. Those became hallmarks of the Ruger brand, qualities that were, and still are, really important to a lot of gun owners. That foundation of quality plus accessibility, enabled by something like investment casting, was just crucial.
Okay, so that first pistol, the standard .22, and this innovative manufacturing approach really set them up. How did they build on that success? How did Ruger grow through the following decades?
Right. Well, after establishing themselves with that pistol and then moving into single-action revolvers like the Blackhawk in the late 50s, which was also very successful, the 1960s brought another absolute game changer.
Let me guess. The 1022.
You got it. Launched in 1964. The gun website's blog post correctly calls it one of the most popular .22 long rifles ever made. I mean, the impact is just enormous.
Numbers are crazy, aren't they?
They are. According to the source material, looking ahead to 2025, the estimate was over 8 million sold. 8 million.
Wow. That's almost hard to grasp. You see them everywhere. Hunting cabins, ranges, shops.
Everywhere. And they just last. People use them for absolutely everything. Plinking, training new shooters, small game hunting.
The source mentioned someone in the comments using one for gator hunting.
Yeah, which, okay, maybe not its primary design intent, but it speaks volumes about the rifle's reliability and how versatile people find it to be, doesn't it? It's accurate enough, incredibly reliable, and famously easy to customize.
Oh, the aftermarket is huge.
Massive. You can basically build a completely custom rifle on that 1022 action. So that adaptability, plus its affordable price point and ease of use, really aligns perfectly with that average man philosophy the source attributes to Bill Ruger.
So the 1022 was huge in the 60s. What else was happening?
Well, they kept building on their revolver line, refining the Blackhawk design, introducing variations. They were really solidifying their place in the handgun market alongside the growing rifle business.
And into the 70s.
The 70s saw them push into, let's say, more heavy-duty designs, like the Red Hawk double-action revolver, built tough, chambered for powerful cartridges like .44 Magnum. This expanded their reach significantly, appealing more to handgun hunters or people wanting a really robust big-bore revolver.
So expanding their catalog, covering more bases.
Exactly, strengthening their position in both long guns and handguns. By the 1980s, Ruger was, a major force. The blog post mentions continued innovation during this time, new semi-auto pistol designs, developing their bolt-action rifle lines like the M77.
And they're investing heavily in manufacturing too, right?
Yes, the source points that out. Significant investment in automation and more advanced manufacturing tech. This let them really scale up production while maintaining that efficiency and quality control. Ruger wasn't just known. The source says they became a true household name in American firearms.
A trusted brand.
Trusted, recognized, widely available.
Then we get to the 1990s. This period, still under Bill Ruger Sr.'s direct leadership, is described in the source as kind of the peak production years.
They provide a pretty stunning number for that, don't
They
they?
do. For 1999 alone, the blog post states they shipped nearly 985,000 firearms.
Almost 1 million guns in 1 year.
Just incredible scale. It shows the massive market demand across their lines: pistols, revolvers, rifles, rimfire, centerfire. It was also a time of refining existing popular models and introducing new variations to keep up with what customers wanted.
So looking back at that whole period from the 60s through the 90s, you see this consistent theme. Dependable, American-made guns covering a wider and wider range of needs.
Built on that foundation of innovative manufacturing and design. But, as we've hinted, Bill Ruger wasn't just about the nuts and bolts. He had this underlying philosophy that drove everything. And this is where, for me, it gets really fascinating, connecting the engineering success back to the founder's core beliefs.
Yeah, this is maybe the most distinct part of the Ruger story, at least as the gun website's blog presents it. Bill Ruger wasn't just a CEO or a designer. He was, as the source puts it, a thinker with some very deeply held convictions.
About liberty, government.
Exactly. Especially about individual liberty, the proper role or maybe the limited role of government, and the rights and responsibilities that come with being a citizen.
And the Second Amendment was central to that.
Absolutely central, according to the source. His views on the Constitution, and specifically the Second Amendment, seem rooted in this profound belief in individual freedom. And the blog post is very clear on this, a kind of inherent, cautious skepticism toward centralized authority.
So guns weren't just tools for him.
Not solely, no. The source suggests he saw them as more than that, as symbols, even, of personal agency and constitutional protection.
Okay, let's dig into that a bit, especially through that lens of gun owners' rights, based only on what the source material says. How did he view the Constitution?
The blog post emphasizes that he saw the Constitution primarily as a limit on government power. A safeguard against tyranny is the phrasing used. Its main job, in his view as presented, wasn't to empower the government, but to restrain it, to set boundaries it couldn't cross.
And this is where that really strong quote comes in.
Yes, the source includes it, and it's quite stark. Governments are instinctively, automatically, and inevitably tyrannies.
Wow. That's quite a statement.
It is. And according to the source's interpretation, this deep-seated pessimism about government power directly fueled his conviction about the right to bear arms. It wasn't just a nice-to-have or something for hunting or sport. It was fundamental, essential even for preserving all the other rights.
Because citizens needed the means to resist potential tyranny. Is that the idea presented?
That seems to be the core of the argument the source attributes to him. His whole career in designing and making guns, the blog post suggests, was kind of underpinned by this, well, almost libertarian ethos. The idea that citizens needed to be capable, independent, and well-equipped to protect their freedoms, because relying only on the government to protect those freedoms was, from his perspective as described, inherently risky.
So making guns wasn't just business, it was principle-driven.
That's how the source frames it. Providing Americans, specifically the average American, with affordable, high-quality tools was, in this view, enabling them to exercise a critical right. The blog is careful to note, though, that this motivation, while philosophical, wasn't necessarily presented as politically radical in the usual sense, but more focused on that practical aspect of empowering individuals.
That perspective, the skepticism of government, the belief in individual capability, really puts his work in a different light. The blog post actually includes several direct quotes from him that shed more light on this, right? Not just about rights, but design, too.
Yes, they pull out quite a few good ones that illustrate his mindset.
Like this one. Arms makers must be artists as well as engineers. That speaks to more than just function, doesn't it?
You're right. It suggests an appreciation for the form, the feel, the aesthetics of a well-made firearm. Craftsmanship.
And then there's that quote we keep coming back to, the core mission. I wanted to build guns that the average man could afford, but that no one would ever feel were cheap.
That one really encapsulates the link between his business model and his philosophy, as the source presents it, accessibility without compromising quality.
He also apparently said, a well-designed firearm should never feel disposable. What do you make of that?
It points to a focus on durability, longevity, seeing firearms as lasting tools, maybe even heirlooms, not just consumer goods, something to be maintained, respected, passed down.
And his independent streak comes through, too. I never cared about doing what others were doing. I cared about doing what made sense.
Yeah, that fits perfectly with embracing investment casting when maybe others weren't. A pragmatic, results-oriented approach rather than just following the herd.
And even as head of a huge company, his self-image was clear. I don't consider myself a businessman. I consider myself a designer.
His passion remained rooted in the engineering, the problem-solving aspect of creating firearms.
Which connects to another quote. Design is solving a problem simply, and if it's beautiful, you've done it right.
Elegant simplicity, function and form working together. That seems to be the ideal he aimed for.
And his focus on the customer? The shooter. The American shooter deserved better options, and I intended to give them exactly that, a clear sense of purpose.
Definitely. A mission statement for his customers.
And maybe the one that ties it all together, his philosophy on business, individual strength, and rights. I believe in strong companies, strong products, and strong hands to hold them.
That one really connects the dots, doesn't it? The health of the American firearms industry, the quality of the products, and the capability of the citizen, all intertwined in his view, according to the source.
The source also mentions he had views on corporate responsibility, though. It wasn't just about rights.
Right. The blog post suggests that despite his strong pro-Second Amendment stance and skepticism of government, he also believed that manufacturers like his had a duty to promote safe firearm handling, to emphasize quality craftsmanship, and to operate ethically.
So a bit of a nuanced position.
It seems so, based on the source. Portrayed as a staunch defender of the right to own firearms, but also pragmatic, aware of the public perception of the industry and the need for responsible practices for long-term viability.
Okay, so not just pushing guns out the door. It was tied to a broader view of freedom, but also responsibility for both the owner and the maker.
That's the picture the source paints. And it concludes that this legacy, this blend of principle, quality, and American manufacturing continues to influence the company.
Which brings us towards the modern era. Bill Ruger Sr. passed away in 2002. What happened next? Did the company change significantly?
It seems it did, yeah. The blog post points to his passing as a major turning point, naturally. But it suggests the really significant shifts in leadership and maybe company culture started to gain steam around 2006.
And what were those shifts? Moving away from that single strong founder's vision?
To some extent, yes. The source describes it as moving towards a more, let's say, collaborative approach, more emphasis on team-based engineering, actively going out and soliciting customer feedback and actually using it to drive new product development.
And adopting modern manufacturing ideas.
Yes, things like lean manufacturing principles, becoming even more efficient, more responsive.
And this led to that interesting operational strategy the source highlights, the one about launching new products.
Ah, yes. That was apparently a really big deal in the late 2000s, early 2010s. Ruger started doing something pretty radical for the gun industry at the time.
Which was?
Instead of announcing a new gun and then having customers wait months or sometimes even years for it to actually show up in stores, Ruger started launching new products with thousands of units already built, boxed up, and ready to ship to distributors on day one.
Wow. Okay, so announce it and boom, it's available almost immediately.
Pretty much. This completely flipped the script. The industry norm was often hype followed by long waits and back orders. Ruger basically said, if we announce it, you can buy it.
And that worked.
Apparently, it worked very well. It let them capitalize immediately on the buzz of a new product launch. It built a reputation for actually delivering, not just promising. And it was only possible because they had really dialed in their manufacturing efficiency and lean practices. It showed a real commitment to meeting customer demand directly.
And we saw a bunch of new product lines emerge during this period too, didn't we? Reflecting maybe that customer feedback and market awareness.
Definitely. The source mentions things like the SR series pistols, their striker-fired polymer-framed handguns entering a very competitive market, and the Ruger American rifle line.
Right, the American rifle seemed like a big move. Affordable modern features.
Exactly. Bringing things like adjustable triggers, rotary magazines, modern bedding systems to a very accessible price point in a bolt-action hunting rifle. Huge success. And then maybe showing their ability to stretch into new areas, the Ruger precision rifle.
That one made waves too, getting into the long-range tactical market.
Big time. It really put them on the map in the precision shooting world, offering features usually found on much more expensive rifles. It showed they could adapt their engineering skills to totally new market segments.
But the classics still stuck around.
Oh yeah. The source mentions the Mini 14, for example, as a perennial customer favorite based on blog comments. So you see this mix of long-running successful designs alongside these newer innovations.
Okay, so fast forward to the 2020s. What does the source tell us about Ruger today?
Well, it highlights a few key things. one major event was in 2020, the acquisition of Marlin Firearms.
Right, when Remington went bankrupt.
Exactly. Ruger stepped in and acquired the Marlin assets. The source frames this not just as a business deal, but as an effort to sort of rescue and revitalize another historic American gun brand that had frankly struggled in recent years. It shows Ruger's significant position and maybe commitment within the U.S. firearms manufacturing scene.
And business-wise, are they still strong?
According to the source, yes. Still dominant in core areas like rimfire, thanks largely to that unstoppable 10/22, but also revolvers and various rifle categories. They reaffirm the commitment to U.S. manufacturing, describe a positive worker-focused culture.
And financially sound?
Impressively so. The blog post specifically notes the company remains debt-free, which is quite remarkable for a large manufacturing company. The focus, it seems, continues to be on innovation, ethical operations, and developing their own people to lead the company forward.
It really is quite a journey. From that one inspired pistol design in 1949, using that clever casting method, to this major diversified American manufacturer today.
It is, and through all the changes, the source argues there are these consistent threads. That commitment to American engineering, solid craftsmanship, and a willingness to adapt and innovate.
While trying to hold on to those core principles.
Exactly. The blog post reiterates that the fundamental values Ruger strives for, quality, integrity, innovation, are still meant to be central.
And maybe the best summary is that mission statement the source mentions, right? Rugged, reliable firearms for responsible citizens.
That phrase really does seem to capture the essence, doesn't it? It links back to Bill Ruger's initial vision, that focus on dependability, trustworthiness, and it ties into that idea of the responsible citizen, which certainly resonates with many gun owners, including folks here in southern Arizona.
Yeah, it connects the product to the philosophy.
And you see that connection, as the source points out through those user comments, in how people actually use the firearms. Whether it's something practical and maybe a bit unusual, like using a 10/22 for gator hunting, or just the long-term ownership and appreciation for something like a Mini 14. They're tools integrated into people's lives.
Well, this deep dive, guided by that gun website's blog post, has certainly given me a much clearer picture of Ruger. It's definitely more than just a company history.
It's a story about innovation, conviction, adaptation, really an American manufacturing story.
Okay, so let's try to quickly recap the key takeaways from our discussion, based on the source.
Sounds good.
We started with the origin story, 1949, Ruger and Sturm, that crucial first product, the standard .22, inspired partly by the Nambu.
And the absolutely vital role of investment casting, how that innovation allowed them to achieve quality and affordability, directly serving Bill Ruger's goal for the average man.
Right, connecting manufacturing directly to that philosophy and through the lens of the source to enabling broader access for gun owners.
Then we tracked the growth, the iconic 10/22, its massive success, expanding into revolvers like the Blackhawk and Red Hawk, developing bolt actions, hitting those huge production numbers in the 90s.
Then we spent time unpacking Bill Ruger's philosophy as the source presented it, his strong views on limited government, individual liberty, the Constitution as a restraint.
And his belief, according to the source, that the Second Amendment was fundamental for preserving freedom, leading to his principle-driven approach to providing capable tools for citizens. We looked at those quotes that illustrated his thinking on design, quality, and purpose.
And also the nuance mentioned about corporate responsibility alongside his strong rights advocacy.
Then we moved into the post-Bill Ruger era, the cultural shift starting around 2006. The move to collaborative design, customer feedback, lean manufacturing.
And that really smart operational strategy of launching products with inventory ready to go.
Yeah. We touched on key modern products like the American rifle and the precision rifle, showing their ability to adapt, and the recent Marlin acquisition preserving another American brand.
All while, according to the source, maintaining that commitment to U.S. manufacturing and staying debt-free.
A pretty comprehensive journey.
Yeah. So hopefully for you listening, this deep dive has given you a richer understanding of Sturm, Ruger & Co. It adds valuable context, especially here in southern Arizona or anywhere. Firearm ownership is, a significant part of the culture and conversation. Knowing the history, the why behind a major maker like Ruger, it just adds depth.
Absolutely. And maybe a final thought to leave you with, something to mull over, drawn straight from the themes and the source material we discussed.
Right.
Given Bill Ruger's core belief, as the blog post described it, that citizens should be capable, independent, and well-equipped to protect their freedoms, how does Ruger's ongoing focus, as detailed in the source, on providing affordable, high-quality, U.S.-made firearms, things like the Ruger American Rifle, or even the simple, ubiquitous 1022, how does that reflect or perhaps extend that original principle in today's very different world?
Hmm. That's a really interesting question. How does that original vision translate today through those specific product strategies? Lots to think about there.
Indeed.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating history and philosophy of Ruger firearms. We appreciate you tuning in.